Human trafficking is the force, fraud, or coercion of an individual into a sex act, or to sell them into sexual slavery or debt bondage or slavery for labor. We primarily in our ministry deal with sexual bondage, but we do also deal with labor trafficking as well. In the United States of America, if you are under the age of 18 and you are being used in a way that somebody is gaining financially off of your sexual exploitation, you are automatically a traffic victim in this country. The words child prostitute in the United States of America are an oxymoron. There is no such thing as a child prostitute in this country. There are children that are being prostituted. Very, very different. Because one of the things that I think that people are under the misconception of is that if you are being prostituted, that we automatically think that that person is somehow complicit in the act, and that they are getting some sort of benefit from it, they're getting some sort of payoff for it. I read an article in the newspaper the other day that was like fingernails on a chalkboard to me, and they were saying that the oldest profession is alive and well. This is not a profession. Prostitution is not a profession. It is something that is being perpetuated, and people that are broken are being sold, and our young men and young women that are selling people are also trapped in bondage at the same time. Well, in the United States of America, the State Department puts out a number that there is between 15 and 20,000 people that are supposedly trafficked across international borders every year. A lot of us believe that that number in itself is very low, but we never talk about the number of our own children that are being prostituted or sexually exploited on our very own streets, in houses. That number is, the Justice Department puts out a number that there are approximately, and numbers are always estimates at best, between 100 and 300,000 children that are at risk for sexual exploitation every year in the United States of America. Basically, you're talking about children, and I think that that is one of the things that people really have to keep in their mind when you're talking about children that are being prostituted, not just other people that are being trafficking, but let's say you're talking about specifically people that are under the age of 18. Well, children are very easily manipulated. They're very easily lured. A lot of these children come from a sexual abuse in their backgrounds. They could come from broken homes. People that are interested in pedophilia and different things like that, they know what to look for. So traffickers know what to look for in the luring of a child or the luring of a young woman into the world of trafficking. They might initially, in this country, what you hear a lot of times is now the young women will say, "This is my boyfriend." They don't refer to him as maybe somebody who is pimping them. This is their boyfriend. So this young girl now is confused. She thinks that, well, how can this person say that they love me, but they're also selling me? And there's a lot of confusion that is involved in then being sexually exploited. The promise of love, I think, is at the base of all of this, is a child that might be broken or a young woman that might be broken, or the promise of a job for somebody that is in poverty. There was a case in the United States here that I can talk about because it was publicized. And this young girl was from Mexico. She was 13 years old, and she was approached by somebody who said, "There is a job for you in a restaurant. Come and work and be able to send money back to your family that I know they desperately need." Well, when she got here to the United States, there was no job. And that very first day, this 13-year-old child was forced to be with 30 men that very first day. And that was her existence for the next 2 years of her life until she was rescued.
Pure passion that beats for Christ alone.
There are an estimated 27 million people that are being sold into slavery right now at this moment as I'm sitting here talking. And if you think that those 27 million people, when they are reintegrated back into society, will not raise another generation of people that is their identity, we're fooling ourselves. So we are sowing this generation upon generation upon generation. And because the culture of India, there is a lot of men that visit prostitutes that think that it is part of your cultural right. They don't even consider it as adultery. That it becomes perpetuated in that society. And that is why India, I believe, is one of the largest places where children and young women are being sold into servitude. The United States is one of the top 10 destination places in the world. And I think people are astounded to hear that, because like we were talking about, is that people were saying that this is not a problem here in the United States. This is a problem that goes on around across the globe, not here though. But other countries, you'll find that the Eastern Bloc, because of poverty and lack of opportunity, lack of education, countries like Moldova, Russia, Romania, these countries are hotbeds for their young women and children to be lured into trafficking. Interpol put out a number recently that says there are approximately 30,000 young women missing from Romania right now. That's astronomical to me. I think to myself, when you think of a number that they estimate there are 13 million children, which that is under the age of 18, being sold into slavery right now at this moment, I think to myself, how is there not a cry from humanity going out around the world? How do you miss 13 million children that nobody is caring enough to be able to jump on board this epidemic? There is law enforcement that is perpetuating this here, even in the United States. How you work around that is you build bridges with people that you know you can trust, to be able to work with district attorneys, to be able to get the largest sentences that you possibly can for people when they are arrested, and that the public just doesn't stand for it anymore. I think that that is one of the things, is that the public really needs to get on board this epidemic like they did with the AIDS epidemic. All of a sudden you heard so much about it and people were throwing so much money after it, but you have to remember that this is organized crime at its finest. This is the fastest growing criminal enterprise in the entire world, and there is an estimated $34 billion being pulled down by criminals every single year off the buying and selling of human beings. This is big business. And unless we throw that same kind of money from the public at this problem, then we are going to be very, very hard pressed to be able to get a handle on this. George Bush did enact a law in 2006 against trafficking, but having a law on the books sometimes is not enough. People have to force law enforcement to be on the lookout for it. In our state, where I am right now, in Tennessee, we literally just had a law put on the books 2 weeks ago. There is not a law against the selling of human beings in every single state in the United States. And that is like mind-boggling. You would think that that would be one of the first things that you would have sat down and written, buying and selling of people against the law. But that's not the truth.
Your passion that beats for Christ alone. Your passion.
There was a young woman, and she gave an interview, and she said the very first day with the very first person that raped her, that was the day her God died. And that really is the core of this. That is what happens to you at your soul, is that this is so contrary to what should be done to you, what should basically be who God created you to be, that you can't even wrap your mind around the fact that there is a creator in the world that called you to be something else. It's the core of your identity, who you are now. There is shame embroiled in it. Most of these victims will be HIV positive. There is physical abuse, there is torture, there is mental abuse. You are broken at the very core of who you are as a human being. And what I think that people don't understand, and what we really work to talk to people about, is that there is a lot of documentaries, there is a lot of film projects that are done that show the rescue of trafficking victims, but there is very, very little that is shown about the cost of what this is to a human being, and the extent that it takes, and the time that it takes to be able to be restored and to come back from something like this. I know from being an abuse victim myself, what it took for me to be able to be whole and walk in freedom from it. I cannot imagine what it would take to come back from being raped 30 times a day, maybe for the next 3 to 4 years of your life. We believe that without Christ in this equation, all of the best psychologists in the world will never bring somebody to complete wholeness. And so it is not a prerequisite for us in who we work with, but the most successful people that are working with these victims are Christians. And they bring the love of Christ into whatever it is that they do, the compassion of Christ, the wholeness, the identity that Christ would want you to have. And they have had thousands of young women be restored and go on to productive lives, be great mothers to their children that they will have, because they now have wholeness. They now have a future and a hope that God intended for them to have in the first place. I'm the founder of a ministry called For Life Ministries. What we found out is that there are safe houses and shelters in every single country in the world, but most of those shelters are living literally hand to mouth. Some of them can't feed their children and young women 3 times a day because there isn't enough finances to be able to do that. They aren't able to buy the AIDS medicine that might be needed. So what we do is we don't just raise awareness, but we give people the opportunity to partner with us to be able to sow into these safe houses around the world that are doing the work out there on the ground. What is really astounding to me is that safe houses are shutting their doors from lack of finances. There is a woman in Russia right now as we sit here. Her budget is $47,000 a year. She is one of 2 experts on the ground in Russia that had to close her doors from lack of finances. We cannot afford to lose a house or a shelter or somewhere that these children and young women can find restoration. For somebody that might be being used, that is being prostituted, you are not a prostitute. Christ sees you as whole, as lovely. Reach out to Him, call upon the name of Jesus, and ask Him to help you. Ask Him to fill your heart, even in the midst of what you might be going through, with His love, with renewing your mind and sowing the things that you need into your life, even in the midst of what you are, to see Him as who He is, as your salvation through this, and know that He is there to hear your cries and hear your prayers, even when others don't see you.
Your passion that beats for Christ alone.